Hi, my name is Steve Martilli, and in this video, I'm going to share with you what I believe to be a good starting model for anyone looking to ascend. And what I mean by that is to take the path of the light worker, meaning, to live in a place of peace and not be, it's a place of mastery, in fact, where you're in a place of center and peace. And the outside world is not governing and dictating what happens inside. It's the other way around. And that world is not in that type of the model that I'm going to talk about today is not an easy path. But if you can ascend to it, life gets very easy. So it's about doing what's difficult in the beginning to get to what's easy later on. So Harvecker has always said, I love this saying from him that I heard 12 years ago. It's like, do what's easy and do what's hard and life will be easy. If you do what's easy now, then life will be hard. So we're talking about doing what's hard to make life easy, right? And so I'll give you an example of the ascended level of living from a life where you're not in fear. And basically what happens is something happens on the outside. So this is a really key distinction. Something happens externally to you, and then on the inside something happens. And most people never make the connection that there's something on the outside happening and then something on the inside reacts to what's happening on the outside. And if you can make that connection and be aware that there is a connection there, then you have the start of mastery. And what do I mean by mastery is that your inner life creates your outer life. So the way that this model would work is that if something outside of you triggers you, for example, loss of a family member, right? Someone dies, someone close to you, maybe like a friend, or you lose a job, or you lose money, right? And your financial security, which is like, it's happening in most significant numbers that we've seen in a very, very long time. So this is happening to people. And on the inside, you're either doing one of two things. For 99% of people, they're reacting to that and they're going into fear. For the other 1%, they're staying at peace, and this is the level of the mastery, regardless of what happens on the outside. And that's really important, and I'll tell you why. So when you ascend past fear and the limiting circumstances in your life, it comes from being in that state of peace no matter what. So let me give you two examples of what can happen in the body when we're responding to negative circumstances in our life. Again, the negative circumstances don't necessarily mean that you have to have a negative feeling inside. You say, well, Steve, I lost my job, I lost my wife, I lost my dog, right? Like everything's going for a shit. And how could I not be in turmoil and go into depression inside? And the key is that, and this is a spiritual law, is that, and this has been my experience as well, is that the longer that you take to become aware and respond to the reaction you're having to the external environment, the longer it takes to reverse that negative reaction. Let me give you an example. So you lose your dog, or you lose your spouse, or you lose a job, and inside you react to that in fear. You're panicked because you're like, how am I going to provide? Now I've got this mortgage to pay, or I got rent bills, I got to pay for groceries. How am I going to do that? And you panic. If you notice the panic right in the beginning and you're aware of it and you just become the observer to it and watch it, then what happens is you don't give it power. And if you don't give it power, then you don't manifest it and focus on it. And so what happens is that when you resist something, fear, right? You panic, you're giving it energy and attention. The only reason the panic and the fear exists is because you're keeping it alive. It doesn't exist outside your body. It exists in you. So you're keeping it alive by focusing on it. And that's what we're all doing with the fear that we have in our lives. We're resisting it, and what resists persists. That statement applies to this situation where you resist something and then it persists, meaning the fear gets life. Where is it getting life from? It's getting life from you, right? So what we got to learn to do is let it heal and be patient with ourselves so that we can get into a level of mastery so that we're noticing that these fears are coming up when something on the outside world happens. So something in the outside world happens, we react inside. If you can notice it in the beginning and let it dissipate, then it doesn't have control over you. And therefore, you're no longer resisting it and you're back in a place of peace. Okay? And that's mastery. Because once you learn how to master your inner states, then the outside world starts to comply with that mastery. Okay? So, the other situation is something comes up, you get in a panic, and then you dwell on it and you give it more attention and energy, which is a normal human reaction because from a very, very young baby boy or girl, we are taught not to express ourselves, not to feel our feelings, to push them down. What are you doing when you're pushing them down? You're resisting them, which keeps them alive. Now, they might not be alive all the time, but if something triggers you on the outside, all of a sudden, boom, that old feeling comes up from when you were 5 or from last week when you lost your job. It doesn't matter when the actual experience happened. What matters is how do you respond to it internally, okay? Now, if you respond to it in a negative way, you react to it, and then you start to dwell on it and you start to get into horror and fear and you start to dread your life. And then maybe even go into depression where it gets serious negative states over time. Well, now it's going to take more energy for you to get out of that. Because what happens is when you're resisting these fears, this dread, whatever it is, what happens is you're giving it your energy, and that's why you feel tired. That's why you don't feel connected. That's why you feel powerless, lost. Sometimes you feel like you're looking outside for answers instead of inside. That's because you're in that state. You're in that state of resisting those emotions, those negative emotions. It can get to the point where you feel anxiety and depression and you even get negative thoughts. But the key part of this is that it keeps you separate from life. It keeps you separate from life. In other words, you don't feel connected to nature. You don't feel connected to people that are close to you. You feel separate and you want to stay separate in that state. That's what those negative emotions do, okay? Now, what happens physically in the body when fear and limitation show up, okay? And you resist it and give it life and give it energy. What happens is the heart closes. And when the heart closes, the field around the heart diminishes, which means you lose power, your power, this heart source. It means you lose your influence as well, non-locally and locally. It means you lose a connection. You feel powerless. You feel anxiety, separation. But more importantly, you don't believe that you are the co-creator, right? If there's ever been a time in your life where you doubt that you're the creator, it's when you're in that state. So the key is to get out of those states and get back to peace, joy, ecstasy, happiness as soon as you can. Because if you do, then what happens is the heart physically expands. And when I say physically, energetically it expands, right? When the heart opens, it energetically opens and the field around you also extends out. And you can measure this. You can measure this field. If you've read any Joe Dispenza's books, he's been measuring it for years at his seminars. The heart opens and then you've got this field that you can measure. So what happens when that field expands? The communication that you have with the 50 trillion cells you have in your body improves, meaning now if you tell the heart, this is important to me, I love this person, I love doing this activity, this gives me joy, now all the cells become coherent with that message. And the heart receives and sends more signals. See, when the heart's closed and you go into fear, what happens is you're not getting the signals that you normally would be getting when the heart's open. But when the heart opens and you're not in the state of fear, you're just in a state of peace, what happens is you're picking up the more subtle vibrations. You feel more intuitive. You feel more telepathic, meaning you pick up other people's vibrations because the heart is open. That's the key. And so you're receiving signals through the heart and then up to the brain, but you're also sending them out. So people are picking up your vibration, okay? You feel more connected. That's why you feel more connected, because the heart's open. Meaning you can connect and you think, maybe if you're just sitting there feeling peaceful, just feeling like noticing, watching, not even really doing anything. Maybe you're out in nature and you feel so connected to nature. That's when the heart's open. And then all of a sudden you get a download that you got to call someone, and then you call them and they're available and they respond right away. That's when the heart's open. Okay, so but what's happened is most of us are living from a limited heart space. We're in fear, right? Because when something happened on the outside, we reacted and we didn't transcend the fear, we actually let it take hold of us, right? And now we're resisting it more, which is giving it more energy, which is why you feel tired, which is why you feel disconnected, which is why you feel separate. So when the fear comes in and you're about to react to it, you got one of two choices. You either ascend or you go to limitation. And for a lot of people, for a lot of you watching this, you're in limitation right now. What you think's possible is so much smaller than what is actually possible. Okay? Now, when you feel in these expanded states, this is to what you need to do to ascend. You've got to learn to become the observer, to watch what's happening in your body. You don't want to give it power. Remember, the more you resist, the more it persists. You're not resisting it, you're just allowing it to be. And then be patient with yourself and let it heal. Okay, now this is where mastery comes in. It's not something you're going to develop just from watching this video. You've got to learn how to do it. And if you're on the path of mastery, then you will ascend. Okay, if you stick to this and have the discipline to do it. And then life gets easy because you're always in a state of peace. The odd thing may trigger you. Sometimes I get triggered, but then back. It's about how long are you in that negative space? Is it 5 minutes or 5 years? If it's 5 minutes, you can notice, breathe, watch, maybe do a little bit of clapping around it, especially if it's around the heart. And then it dissipates, and then it's gone, and you're back in a state of peace. And then the heart opens. And when the heart opens, now you feel more connected. You're communicating with your 50 million trillion cells, 50 trillion cells in your body, and you're directing them and telling them what to do and telling what's important to you, what gives you joy, what fills your heart with love. And because of that, you feel more connected, you feel more energy, right? Because it's like when you're resisting these negative fears, anxiety, this dread, when you're resisting it, you're giving it your energy, you're giving it away. And that's why you feel tired. If you stop giving it away, then guess what happens? You feel full again. You feel energized. And this is the most important part, not only do you feel more energy and you feel more joy, peace, and happiness, you know that you are the co-creator. There's no doubt in your mind. Why? Because your heart knows. The heart knows the truth. So for most people don't know they're the co-creator, don't know that they're creating their world, it's because the heart is closed. And when the heart's closed, you're not getting the same signals, the same information that you were when the heart was open. Okay, so again, to ascend, you got to learn to watch what's happening in the body, become the observer, notice, watch it, breathe through it. You're not trying to change anything or trying to fix anything. You're just watching and noticing, and then be patient and persistent as you let it heal, and it will eventually unwind itself to the point where you feel a state of peace. And then it's just a matter of maintaining that state no matter what's happening on the outside. How you react on the inside is the game that you play after that. That's the path to mastery. Okay? I hope you found this useful and helpful. If you feel that I can benefit helping you to release any of these negative energy blocks, emotional blocks, stuff from the past that you know is still affecting you now, then I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. There's a link down below to my calendar. You can book some time with me. It's a free call. Basically, on the call, I'm going to chat with you, and I want to find out, is this something I can help you with? And even pinpoint maybe where the blocks are. And once we have those two things, if I can help you, then we'll talk about how, what the investment is, and what's involved, okay? Calendar link's just down below. Thanks for watching and listening. My name's Steve. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. If you found this video helpful and useful, please share it with someone you love and care about. And I always like a thumbs up if you did enjoy this video. Thanks again for watching. My name's Steve, and we'll talk to you next time.